Glad to see you guys back. Um, I thought about doing something differently this year. I know I always come up here and kind of just answer you guys' questions and talk about things that you want to talk about, but I decided to kind of switch it up. So this year, before we start, I'm going to talk about something that I want to talk about, whether it's a company or a business or something that pertains to youth. It can even be a book. I'm not going to put myself in a box, but yeah, so that's what I'm going to do this year. We're going to see how it goes, and hopefully you guys enjoy, and we'll figure this out as we go. So, first company that I would like to talk about is a company called PG Lane, founded by Kendrick Lamar and Dave Free. It's centered around youth development and content creating. One of the first young talents. His name is Baby Keem. His album is coming out tomorrow night. Why this means something to me is Dave Free has been a very, very close friend of mine for a long time. And he was with me while I was going through my contract negotiations. And he provided a lot of support for me, as I did for him, and as he started his new company. So, he holds a very dear place in my heart, and I'm excited for what they have in store. So, that being said, now I will talk about what you guys want to talk about.
You have always had a platform and used it well. Where did the inspiration come to do this and to take these few minutes?
I think it came from just all the work that I've been doing, outside of football, all the learning that I've been doing outside of football. I think we always preach about there's more to life than just football. And so I was trying to figure out a way to be a symbol of that and, talk about something other than football for a change. I know you guys sometimes ask me some very thoughtful questions, but, I decided to kind of help push you guys in the right direction.
Bobby, how busy are you away from the game? When you're not working out, when you're not here, like even in the off season, is it 9 to 5? Is it like a couple hours a day? How busy is it?
It's pretty busy. I think, right when I get done with football, I kind of switch my mentality and start going into business. I go into the office at Fuse all the time. I'm constantly looking at different companies, constantly reading, constantly trying to grow as a person, because I think it's important that we start to open the conversation up that, you can do more than just your sport. I think I feel like that's the reason why a lot of guys get really confused or have trouble when they leave their sport that they're playing, because they focus so much of their time and energy on that sport that they don't realize that this game can be taken away from you at any given moment. And, you have to have something else. This game doesn't last forever, and you have to have a different path. Now, so I've always felt like football is an amazing sport because we have a lot of time. You know what I mean? I think, unless you're Aaron Donald, you don't work out outside of 4 hours, you know what I mean? And so that still leaves 20 hours for you to master something else. And business is something I decided to try to master.
You know Dave Free.
My cousin introduced me to Kendrick and everybody probably in 2007, give or take some years. And our relationship just started to develop. And as I got to the league, I think that's when they dropped Section 80. And, when I was in California, I didn't have a place to stay. So Dave let me stay at his house. And I think after we did that, we grew our friendship from that point.
To stay, what do you mean?
Well, I didn't want to stay in Ontario with my family. He knew I was staying with my family. I was sleeping on, my dad's couch and stuff, and they got rid of my room. So I told him about that, and, he had extra space, so he let me stay there.
Since you did your contract, have you heard from other players who've reached out to you saying, hey, I'm interested in doing the same thing?
Yeah, I've had other people reach out to me and talk to me about wanting to do their contract, but the thing that I, always advise players is this is not something that you can just wake up one day and say you want to do. You have to prepare and you have to do the work. So, if a guy hasn't attempted to learn or try to prepare for the contract negotiations, then I don't necessarily advise them to do that, because it's something that you can do, but it is complicated. So you can't be half in it. You gotta, fully be in it. And it's been a couple guys that have been, and there's been a couple guys that not. But again, I think it's for me, it's just showing players that they don't have to just be in a box. If you don't want an agent, you don't have to have one. And if you do have an agent, that doesn't stop you from learning the business that you're in, because if you don't, you will get taken advantage of.
About being an agent when your playing career's done?
Nah, nah, I can't deal with personalities like that every day. I could barely deal with my own personality.
What did you learn from that experience that still enriches you today?
Which one?
Well, negotiating your own deal and going to do it yourself.
I think it opened a lot of doors for me. It opened doors that I didn't know existed. When you constantly have your head down in football, there's a whole new world out there that that you can be passionate about. And I think it's something I definitely learned was understanding your value. And it's taught me a lot of things from a business perspective and how people look at business that I carry to all the other stuff I've done.
Bobby, what do you think this team learned last year from not having any preseason games? Clearly, you guys went out and had probably your best season opener ever that you've had in Seattle, kind of carrying that over to this year with all of the key starters not playing this preseason.
I think the biggest thing is, we always preach it, but I think it was more evident, last year. Practice is everything. And between hitting at practice, visualizing at practice, the way you practice is how you're going to play in the game. And so, when we knew we didn't have preseason games, there was a little bit more focus on making sure that you were getting your angles right, making sure you were fitting up, making sure you were doing all the right things because you weren't going to get those, full live reps. But, at the end of the day, it's like riding a bike. You know what I mean? You find a guy with the ball and get him down as physically as you can. So I think, we've been doing it for a while, and it's something that we can definitely take advantage of.
How do you think Jamal Adams might look different this year compared to last year?
I think he'll be faster, and what I mean by faster, I think he won't have to think as much because I feel, when he came last year, it was a lot being thrown at him. At one time he had to pick up, which he did a great job of picking it up, but now he's had a whole offseason of really just taking your time, understanding the defense, knowing where you can make your plays and things like that. And so I'm excited to see him fly around, make the plays that he does.
You've seen Carson Wentz a lot the last few years. I think you'll see him again. What is the challenge of him, and do you think it'll be any different with him in a different team this time around?
The personnel around him is going to be different, but I would assume that the offense is going to be pretty similar to the one. I think that's the reason why he came back to Indy, because he had a lot of success with I think his name is Frank, right? So you'll see a lot of RPOs, a lot of movement. They have a great running game that's going to complement some of their play action stuff. And I wouldn't be surprised if they try to move him out of the pocket unless he's still hurt, and get the ball out of his hands. And he's going to find receivers. I think he's really good at getting the ball out of his hands, making some good reads. It'd be a lot different than the film that we're watching, Phillip Rivers, because he's had so much experience, and so he's calling out plays and things of that nature. So I think it'll be fun. You definitely have to be conscious of him taking off if he doesn't have anything.
In the passing game, with no T.Y. Hilton, just what kind of weapons do they have out there?
They still have a lot of young talented guys out there that they can get the ball to. I think they had one guy, I forgot his name, that didn't play as much last year, so he's going to get an opportunity to play. And then they use their running backs a lot. Their running backs rarely stay in to block. They put them outside as like a receiver. They line them inside like it's like a nickel. And I would bet money that they're going to try to put the balls in their hands.
Last year, you guys are playing the Falcons in the season opener, and they're more known for slinging the ball over the place with the passing game. And the Colts are a more physical, run game-oriented team. Do you see that being a tougher challenge without having the preseason reps going against a team like that?
No, I don't think so. I think all of us are itching to hit somebody and really take them to the ground. So I'm pretty sure they're excited just like we are, and I'm ready to go out there and hit, and we can be physical just like they can.
And Jordan Brooks this year, obviously he showed some good things last year. He'll probably have a bigger role this time around.
I'm definitely expecting a lot of growth, consistency. I think as you become a young player and you get older and older into your career, you become more consistent because you have seen a lot of the things over and over and over again, and then you recognize this this football world is really, they run the same plays. They just do it differently. So once you can master the concept, you just got to figure out how they hide it. And so, I think he has the concepts mastered, and I feel like he's going to take a huge step this year.
Bobby, what did you say to KJ Wright? Have you been in touch?
Well, I told him that black and gold or black and silver looks ugly on him, for sure. But we talked all the time. I was, very aware of everything that was going on. Obviously, I was sad to see him go, but I was definitely happy because he had an opportunity to continue playing a game that he clearly loves. And it's gonna be weird for sure. But I look forward to watching his film. I think he changed his number to his college number. I wouldn't say that's the best college number. I'll still go with 9 in my opinion. But yeah, he knows how I feel about him. He knows what he means to me, and not just as a football player, but as a brother of mine. Just because he's playing in Las Vegas doesn't mean that our connection isn't as strong as it ever's been. And, we just have to make sure that we reach out more now that we don't see each other every day.
Did you make any comment to him about taking Bo Jackson's number with the Raiders?
I didn't even think about that.
When you think KJ Wright, do you think Bo Jackson is an athlete?
That's definitely not what I think, for sure. He used to call himself the elevator. I guess they called him the elevator when he played basketball in high school, and I don't believe that at all. I need tape, for sure. Just like some of the media posted some pictures playing basketball, that definitely looked Photoshopped, for sure. Just saying.
Spend almost a decade playing alongside him.
It meant the world because I think it was just kind of the perfect storm. I came in and, I didn't know what was going on, but, excited to play football and then, to have somebody who literally just went through that whole process and was still going through it. And so we kind of grew up together. We, there's a lot of life experience that we were able to, have and be involved in each other's lives for, and there was a lot of football experiences. So we saw a lot of highs, a lot of lows, and we see a lot of growth in one another. And it was amazing to have that type of communication where, I didn't have to say anything, and he knew exactly what I was thinking, or when I wanted to take a chance on something or he wanted to take a chance, we knew we had each other's back. And so, now that we don't have that, we just got to, build it again.
At what point did you remind Peter, mention to him that he did not recruit you in high school?
The first day I saw him, yeah.
At the pre-draft thing, or?
I didn't, was it pre-draft? I can't remember, but it definitely was on my mind because, who he was recruiting was my brother, basically. He lived down the street. So, I remember him coming. I remember, seeing him walk in, and I remember him walking right past me to Omar. And then I went to Utah, and I thought about it every time I played at California school for letting me have to go all the way to the cold. And, it was the first thing I said to him. At least, better late than never, I guess.
Bobby, with this offseason, the speculation around Russell Wilson's future and then Dwayne Brown, Jamal Adams' contract situation, and Quandre Diggs, in the end, they're all playing week 1 for you. Does this kind of have a way of working out as you guys look to this regular season and start?
Yeah, things always tend to work out, whether they work out how you hope they work out or they don't. But all of those guys are professionals and great men. And, I knew that something was going to get worked out. And regardless of the situation, when it came time to play football, I knew they were going to be ready and locked in. So definitely excited to have those guys back and being able to play with them on the field. And, again, we don't know what the future holds or, what's going to happen. So all we have is this moment, and, we're going to cherish this year.
Back in high school, how tough was it to kind of transition from being a basketball guy to committing yourself to football?
Well, it really wasn't that hard because I saw everybody growing this way, and I was kind of bulking up. So I knew height wasn't going to be my strong suit. So I chose a sport that height didn't necessarily matter.
How's the fullback, backup middle linebacker doing?
He's doing great. I was trying to figure out where he's going. No, he's doing gret. I watched the preseason. What he did out there and, you know, not even expecting to play linebacker was extremely fun to watch. So, you know, and he's a very funny guy. So excited to have him in the room for sure.
Did any other Pac-12 schools recruit you?
I had no other offers. Utah State was my only offer. Yeah, Utah State was my only offer, and Stanford, I guess, talked to my coach, and my coach basically, you know, fabricated that Stanford was about to offer me. So Utah State offered me because they thought Stanford was going to offer me. So that's how I got my scholarship. Or I was going to JC, and I was probably going to be with Bruce Irvin. So, yep.
Coach Rice had mentioned that your mom was really adamant that he helped get you a football scholarship. Why was that so important to her that you played D1 scholarship?
Because she holds people to their words, and so that was one of the things that pulled me away from basketball. Was he was very, very confident that he can get me a scholarship, and so when you know, when she comes and press him about scholarship, he's gonna get it done for sure.
What was your reaction when you first learned the real version of the Stanford story?
I was in shock because I didn't, you know, long story short, I had a TA class for my first period in basically TA, you didn't have to go to school, basically. So I was sleeping, and I woke up to, like, I don't know, maybe 50 calls. And when I finally answered the phone, everybody was telling me that Stanford was at the school, wanted to talk to me. And by the time I got to the school, they were gone. And everybody was talking about why this is why you should, you know, be on time for school, yada, yada, yada. And that was it. And so that's what I always thought the Stanford story was. In comes you win the Super Bowl. My head coach at high school is doing some things with the youth. And so I go and talk to him about the youth. And then that's when he explains to me that, you know, he was at like a bar or something where the coaches were at and walked over to Jim Harbaugh and said, you know, we got this linebacker, you should look at him. Jim said no. Then he walked from Jim Harbaugh to Utah State and said, hey, that guy over there is going to offer them right now if you don't. And so they offered me, and I wasn't going to accept it, and then I was forced to accept it.
The coaches were both at a bar together?
I think it was one was a head coach, and then other was like a recruit for Utah State. So that's how I ended up at Utah State.
First year at Utah State, would you have been a guy who's in the, like now they have the transfer portal? Were you close to being like a transfer portal guy after that first year?
Oh, I definitely was going to leave. After my first year, because after my first year, my mom had got sick, so I was going to move closer, and she told me to stay, so I stayed.
Do you remember your height and weight, like junior, senior year?
Well, we don't even need to talk about junior year. It's not great. But senior year, I don't know. I was probably like 5'10", maybe a little shorter, 190, something around there. But I was fast. And I played tight end, and I had like 7 touchdowns, 600 yards. No, I think it was 11 touchdowns, 600 yards. Who's counting them?
Did you enjoy their game Saturday night?
Yeah. I had a lot of Washington State fans hitting me up saying that they were going to win, and didn't work out for them.
And the press conference.
Cool. Y'all good? Appreciate y'all. See y'all next week.
Thank you.